So policy matters for microbiology and microbiology matters for policy. And as we've heard briefly, there's a role for us to connect you as expert members and scientists with policymakers. So there's a number of reasons why we want to do this. We want to champion the value of what you and the microbiology do to address global challenges and benefit society. So antimicrobial resistance keeps cropping up, obviously, climate change, food security, sustainable development, building our bioeconomy. All of these draw on microbiology, are informed by microbiology, and microbiology is important for tackling them. The other aspect of what we want to do is inform the policy that affects microbiologists and that can benefit from microbiology. So we want to meet the demand from policymakers and where it's needed promote evidence-informed policy by drawing on the breadth and depth of your expertise. So this covers different areas, as we've heard. This covers areas of public policy that can benefit from microbiological expertise, evidence, research and innovation. So antimicrobial resistance is a key example of that, where you can really help inform tackling that challenge and the policies around that. But another key thing for us as a society is ensuring that you have the resources and support to be able to do and translate the excellent microbiology and impactful microbiology you're doing. So we also, as we are trying to do here today, we also want to empower you to be able to engage in science policy. So we want to keep you informed about policy developments that are affecting microbiology, and we also want to provide opportunities and support for you to connect and communicate with policymakers and other end users of research. So we work on a broad range of topics, which I think reflect the importance of microbiology, but also the breadth and depth of our members' expertise and the wide range of issues you're working on. So one sort of side of what we do is this sort of policy for science. So that's the science that affects your ability, the policy that affects your ability to do excellent science. So these are just a range of topics I've worked on since I've been at the Society over the past few years. As I see, we've got things from Brexit, which we're working on quite a bit at the moment, industrial strategy, skills, funding. We also do a bit on higher education and that kind of stuff, sort of engaging with our professional development side of things. And then we're also interested in science for policy, so how can your skills and expertise inform public policy areas? So these are some areas we've worked on: antimicrobial resistance, climate change, public health, the bioeconomy, food security. So as you see, we cover a broad range of things, even though we're quite a little team, and I think that reflects sort of the excellent wide range of stuff you guys are doing. I should also add where we can really add value as a society, I think, in sort of the policy process, is we can work at the interface of these. So antimicrobial resistance is a key challenge that microbiology can inform and tackle. But we also want to tell policymakers, research councils and others, well, what do you need to be able to do to tackle that challenge as microbiologists? So we might look at infrastructure challenges you've highlighted to us, regulation, the need for interdisciplinary research, sort of funding needs, skills, and sort of topics like One Health, and promote those and tell policymakers that's what you're telling us you need. So I thought I'd just quickly talk through some of what we do. Sarah and James have talked about some of these. So we coordinate responses to consultations that are relevant to our members in microbiology, and we are always keen to get more and more members to be able to pitch in their ideas and that. Even if it's just a paragraph on one question or just an example you want to tell us about, that's really useful to bring this alive to people. Paul's going to talk about giving evidence to oral evidence to a select committee. And then, so in the middle there, we've got sort of one of our responses, which summarises some key stuff we did around Brexit recently, which was informed by members who came to a meeting and also reviewed our response. And then this Science and Emergencies UK Lessons from Ebola, which was a response to a select committee. As you can see in that paragraph there, the Microbiology Society's evidence and what members were telling us was cited in the report that went on government record, and government and stakeholders had to respond to that report. So we do get impact from this, and your views do get put out there on record on Parliament. We also do more proactive work, so we work with members to produce policy briefings on key issues. These might be in response to something that's a key policy issue, but they might also be things which you've told us we think should be higher up on the agenda in policymakers. So human fungal diseases is quite a good one, where I attended one of our focus meetings and it was clear there was a policy need, so we decided to produce a briefing which we distributed to parliamentarians across the UK. And we also took them along to a meeting in Parliament that was looking at these things. Another thing we do is we're starting to do more workshops, events and reports where members can get involved at all different stages in that. So the big thing we've done, which you can pick up a copy in the room and on our stand, is we did a big project in microbiome science. And we did this because policymakers are telling us this is an emerging area of science and technology, but we're not sure what's the evidence there, what are the key issues, what should we be focusing on. So we're meeting a policy demand. So we assembled an expert working group who sort of coordinated it. We then held a series of workshops around the country where members came along from all different disciplines of science, as well as policymakers, government departments, research funders, to say what the key challenges were. We then worked to distill that down into this report, which we launched at the Royal Society last year, which brought in a whole range of learned societies and other government departments to hear about what the key issues are. And we're now following a range of things to address some of the recommendations we made in this report, including working with people like the Knowledge Transfer Network and speaking to people like BBSRC. So as you can see, we're sort of really influencing people or helping to inform them that affect your day-to-day science. As James alluded to, we also do a lot of collaboration and engagement. So we work with Campaign for Science and Engineering on some of the bigger issues to feed in your views to their broader consultation responses. We also work with a range of organisations, including BSAC, and their policy person Michael is in the room today, through the Learned Society Partnership on Antimicrobial Resistance, to try and sort of bring different organisations together and the collective interdisciplinary needs of the research community. And a lot of what I do also is having sort of one-to-one meetings or arranging our members to represent us at meetings with all of these different policy stakeholders. So that might be government, Parliament, so MPs, APPGs, as we've discussed. We also engage a bit on sort of industry and innovation. Research councils, we've got quite a bit of engagement, particularly with people like BBSRC here, who obviously really affect sort of your day-to-day funding and lives. Obviously scientists are a key stakeholder, which I do a lot of talking to, which is why I love coming to conference. And also we do a lot of engagement with other scientific and policy bodies and charities. So the other thing is what we do is the member opportunities. How can we support you? So members represent us at science policy events and meetings, and we put all of this in our newsletter and other things. So do get in touch if you're interested in coming along and representing us and getting some experience of going to Parliament or other meetings. Key thing we really want help with is informing our consultation responses, briefings and reports. We have policy committees, so elections are open at the moment, which I'll explain in a minute. And we also have other external committees that the Society is represented on, such as sort of through Public Health England, that where we look for expertise to represent the Society and the membership and microbiology on those. And we also offer internships as well. And the other key aspect of what I do, as I say, is informing members. So we have our newsletter, MicroPost, our blog, Microbiology Today, where we communicate policy developments, policy opportunities, and the experiences of members who've engaged in policy as well, to give you a better idea how to engage in this process. So you might be asking, what's in it for me? We all know you're extremely busy trying to get your grant funding, do your lab work and so on. I was previously a scientist, so I relate to you a little bit. So I think what's in it you do, we can offer you opportunities and support to bridge that science policy interface. We can help you champion your microbiology community and its impact, so we can help you provide a collective amplified voice. So even if you don't have time to really pitch into a big issue, you can put in your voice and we can amplify that out and bring it all together. And that's useful for policymakers as well, who want topics condensed down into the key issues. I would say that engaging with policy can help you maximise the impact of your science and microbiology in general. It can help you expand your network. So people attended our microbiome workshops, came along and said they met scientists in their own department who they never normally speak to because they attend different academic meetings, but we brought them together in a different context and disciplinary and stuff. And I think it's also good for your professional development as well, sort of engaging with policymakers, attending events, writing policy briefings. That gives you skills and also things you can put in your CV and stuff to say you're really trying to get your science out there, which will probably benefit your scientific careers as well. And I think the key thing is the Society's here to represent its members, so we can't do our work without your input, so we're here to represent you and the issues you're important about. I'm not a microbiologist, but I'm here to support you to communicate with policymakers. So how can you get involved and stay informed? The key thing I want to emphasise is that you do not need to be a policy expert to pitch in anything to our thing. So we recently did a Brexit response and we had some early career scientists pitch in some ideas. They were a bit tentative because they weren't policy things. But what we did is, in our response to the select committee on this Brexit thing, is we put a section on early careers and highlighted these some case studies of concerns of PhD students who are worried about what they should do next, which really gives case studies for policymakers to emphasise how policy is influencing our members. Tell us your interest and what your areas of expertise are. So we've got some forms that are going around the room where if you put your email address, we'll send you an email afterwards and give you an opportunity to get on our distribution list for policy. You can also log into the website on the My Society portal, and you can update your areas of expertise and interest in science. And that's really useful for me and Roya. So when a consultation response or an opportunity comes in, we go through the database and look for people who are experts in that area. But we've got 4,000, 5,000 members, so we can't do that very easily, but if you're on the database, we're more likely to contact you. And the key thing is just please keep an eye on what we're doing in the newsletter and stuff. A lot of people tell us they don't know we're doing policy, but we try and cram the newsletter with policy. So keep an eye, we put opportunities in there, tell you about what we've been doing. We're increasingly looking to do more blog posts and that, and we're interested in members who've sort of engaged in policy and want to write about that for us as well. We're quite active on social media. Roya and I are on Twitter and that, where we also use that to follow a lot of the policy stuff that's going on. That's quite useful. In Microbiology Today, we always have a policy article. And the next one coming out in May will actually distill some of the topics we're discussing here as well. And please do contact the team if you want to know what we're doing, or if there's a policy issue or something that's concerning you. We always want to hear that. We might not be working on it at the time, but that might be useful to inform what we do in the future. So please do get in contact. So I'm now going to hand over to Paul Kellam, who's the chair-elect of our policy committee. He's going to talk about his experience having done some policy work for us.
So I do personify not being a policy expert. So this is going to be a very sort of personal view of how the work of Paul, Roya and the rest of the society helped me get through something that was really quite exciting, but it was more exciting after the event than perhaps during the event, when you can reflect on it, and that it wasn't, as far as I understand, a car crash. That's what people have said quite kindly to me. When I first started this, so I'm an elected member of council, so I'm there to represent you as members of the society. And I started to be drawn with conversations with Pat Goodwin, who's the front here, into policy. I thought, well, what does this mean for me, not knowing that I would end up in front of a committee later on? And I thought, how could I relate it back to me and my science? And I thought, well, it is a little bit like science. It's policy for me is a deliberate system. It's got principles that guide decisions. You know, you try and achieve rational outcomes. You can take policy out at the beginning and put scientific research and development, and that starts to then think, okay, this is not too foreign. Perhaps I can contribute to some of these things. And what we really want to do, and this is just to very briefly echo Paul, is to make sure that the policies that we can contribute to and influence are really evidence-based. That's our strength. And if we can do that through empowering members of the Microbiology Society or the officers of the society to give evidence, then it comes from a position of authority and depth of thought, and that's what this meeting is about, to encourage people to get involved. I'm going to skip over a couple of slides because they've been covered, and to try and keep up with time. I'll leave the picture on here. This is really what it looks like. And actually, when I was preparing for this, and I'll come to that in a moment, many of us, I think probably most of us in the room, have had an interview at some point of your life. And depending on what level of job you're going through, it moves from one chair to multiple chairs to a horseshoe table or a long table set out, and you've got a chair in the middle. But the experience is the same, which is there's people there to ask you questions, there's people there to try and gain information from you, and if you've prepared, the chances are you're going to be able to answer some of the questions. You don't have to answer all of the questions. You perhaps need a reason why you can't answer all of the questions, but nonetheless, you're there, and it's not really, in my experience, an adversarial setting. It's there to exchange information in response to questions. And if you take away the adversarial aspect of it, it doesn't become quite so daunting when you're sat with two colleagues on either side, looking at the table in the middle, trying to hear the questions. The acoustics weren't very good. And sometimes you struggle to hear what's being said. Fortunately, it's all being recorded, so you can hear what the question was afterwards when you come back and look at the transcripts. I've just given you I've put up here, I'm just going to give 3 slides about what we did for the House of Lords Select Committee, and it was a Select Committee on the Life Sciences Industrial Strategy. And the people on the bottom here are the ones that I think, for me, actually made this a success. I was at the end point of the success of what all of these people put together. The first point is, I haven't got a dotted line as to why we ended up being asked to give evidence. And for me, looking back and reflecting of the last year in the society, it's really a culmination of 4 to 5 years of a deliberate intent from the society, led by people like Pat and Peter and the council, to try and make policy central to the society and to use the expertise of the membership to do all of the things that Paul has just explained. And that puts you in a position then to actually contribute more and not be too nervous about when opportunities come along. The timeline was quite interesting. We got a notification, and I've been back through my emails. I think these dates are correct, but you can Paul will correct them, I'm sure, if they're not. Around about the end of November last year, we had a notification of an invitation to the House of Lords Committee. As you just started to get the sort of sense of adrenaline and motivation and thinking, okay, it was cancelled, and I can't remember for the reason it was cancelled now, but it was a very good reason, and it was rescheduled until after Christmas, and that immediately created that's great, that also ruins Christmas, but okay, we'll worry about it. In fact, it didn't. By the time we got to the beginning of January, we started in earnest. The other thing that really helped was both Paul and Roya, together and separately, said, don't worry, we'll help you prepare. And I took that as I don't really know what that means, but let's see what happens. And what it really means was they both went away and researched very, very quickly a whole world of information that was sent to me in briefing notes with questions. What else would you like to find? The support is quite amazing, and that applies to all of us from the society that will engage in this. The support is incredible. While that was going on in the background, I was also reading. I had an interest in this subject area anyway. We were doing a lot of preparation, and then we convened a meeting round about the 11th of January where Pat wasn't able to attend that, but had contributed behind the scenes. The 5 of us sat down and we came up with what we really wanted to try and get over as our voice. And what we'd done in preparation for that is to look at transcripts, videos of other people presenting to the Select Committee. I was learning how I needed to behave. People were helping me with getting all of the information together. And then we spent about 4 days polishing this into documents so that I had something to take with me. So there is a saying that one of my sons keeps quoting to me, which it's prior preparation prevents, and there's a 4-letter word beginning with P, poor performance. And that is exactly what we managed to do. We prepared and prepared and prepared, and by the time we were sitting outside the Select Committee, we knew these documents, the Life Sciences Industrial Strategy, Patient Capital Review, not the patients that we necessarily understand. This is long-term investments in biosciences. It's not a riveting read, but it's important preparation. We'd had conversations with other experts. We'd looked at other evidence sessions. Everything was good. We've been through a whole list of questions, and we started to ask, what is it that we can comment on as a society? What is it that's not really in our sphere of expertise or influence? What are the messages and points we want to get over? So by the time I arrived on the day, I had a version of this, and you won't be able to read it, I think, but everyone prepares in their own way. I have all of the words on one side of the page, and on the other side of the page, I have the things that I really, really need to remember to say, and you'll notice there's only a few words in each of those bullet points. But there's one at the bottom, which was, this question would be about, was the life sciences strategy too narrow? Was it just focused on medicine? And the thesis that was coming out of this committee was, yes, it was too narrow, and we agreed that we would agree with that. But we wanted to get specific microbiological points in, and if you like, certain things that were quotable or that would be useful sound bites and examples. So antimicrobial resistance was a good example of how you cross many, many disciplines, but it's really important for life sciences and human health. And we wanted to make points that what I can't actually read. Can I take that? No, it doesn't make any difference. Points that microbiology crosses all of these disciplines, and therefore we were a great example of how a restricted life science strategy view didn't take in the full encompassing of all of our members and all of our work. Just to finish up, Peter, because I know I'm running out of time, that preparation people will prepare in different ways. For me, it was a great comfort that not only did we have all of the preparation there, it was distilled down, and that was my homework to make sure that I had certain sound bites on one side. I didn't really realise beforehand that this was all going to become a matter of public record. Of course, in reflection, of course it is, but that was a useful snippet, I think, on the morning. Now, don't worry, it's all being recorded and written down. It's also live. I've not been back and watched it. I don't like watching myself because I find out all of the tics that I have, and then you're aware of the tics that you have and you don't want to do that again. If you want to watch it, there's an hour, no, actually 45 minutes of video up there, and you can judge for yourself. And it was very useful for me to watch other people. So a person I know from a previous life, Mark Wolpert, gives evidence a lot in front of these committees. He's very, very good at answering questions and then saying, when he doesn't know the answer, I really don't know the answer to that. And then saying, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm happy to go away and find out the information and supply it to you afterwards. And it's just the confidence to roll through those things. And we did exactly that, again, through preparation, to say we didn't know something, that we would be able to provide some written evidence afterwards. And that's exactly what we did. We took some written evidence and submitted it a few days later. That's what I really want to say. I think that's where it ends. This is what we hope we will get in the future. One of the feedbacks that we had was that it was nice to have a scientist giving evidence, and a scientist supported by a membership society. That doesn't mean it should always be me or someone like me turning up there. It should be someone that's expert and confident and wants to engage with it from the society, whether it's Peter, Paul, Roya, other members of council, or the membership itself. So the more we can get people engaged, the more we get the evidence base, the more we can actually go and influence, hopefully, these aspects of policy.